Good morning. My name is Doc Ritterbush. I am an employee here at Fossil Creek Nursery, and I'm probably an ideal kind of guy to give this talk on Xeriscape. I was one of the task force that developed the concept back in 1968. The Denver Water Board was running out of water. They didn't have ample supply or storage. They were in the process of building more storage dams up in the mountains, and they came to the landscape industry to try to help homeowners save water in their landscape and have a more efficient and healthy landscape. So this was 1978, and the task force was originally conceived by the Denver Water Board, and it was led by a really good guy from the Denver Water Board in the sense of facilitating the meetings of the landscape professionals. I was at the time on the board of the Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado and the Associated Nurserymen's Association. And the true head and leader of this task force was Dr. Jim Foyt. He was professor emeritus at CSU, was housed in the Denver Botanic Gardens, where I often worked. And Jim was a special guy. And he's the one that came up with the name Xeriscape. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about what Xeriscape is and how to pronounce it. And in fact, I hear all the time Xeriscape from people. Well, in reality, Xera, not zero. Xera, X-E-R-I, is the Greek word for dry. And Dr. Jim Foyt came up with that name, and we all agreed. And it is now not only successful here in Colorado after 45 years, but it is a worldwide concept of which those of us that participated in the task force are very proud. And it's done a great job in saving water. So today I want to go over, you've learned the history enough, I want to go over the principles involved, which are very important. There are misconceptions that this has to be ugly, hot, desert-like, unattractive, not colorful, gravelly, cactusy, and nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, what we want is well-enhanced soil, a good choice of plants, the use of mulch, proper irrigation techniques, and you can have a wide myriad of attractive plants that work well not only for your taste, but to save water and have a good, easy maintenance garden. So let's take them one at a time. There are 7 principles of Xeriscape. When we discussed these, this was months of interaction. I think close to 14 or 18 months going over this, and finally coming up with the final formal, not only name, but all of the principles and how to apply them for the homeowner. First and foremost, with everything in life, you need to think things through, know what you want, and make a plan. And from that plan of discussion and in your mind, you need to really make a design. Because without that, other things fall apart. So what you can do is simply know the measurements of your yard. If you have an archived, saved plot plan or measurement. You can certainly measure your lot, even within a few feet will help. And then also measure your house, your patio, your deck, and existing gardens and lawn. You can use a simple engineer scale or architect scale that you can buy in an office supply store, and you can put it to scale, which actually is kind of important. You don't need to be an artist. You certainly don't need to be a landscape architect, but you need to have a concept of where these plants are going to go, and are they going to please you in the end and solve the issues at hand of water conservation. So with that plan in mind, do the measurements and then do a little research. And you can come here to the nursery. One of the reasons I'm here is because over the years, even though I'm generally retired, moving back home here to Fort Collins, I am in alignment in many ways when I own my own large nursery and greenhouse garden center, of helping people, of being there for customer service and informing, educating the customer so they can make their own informed decisions. And that's what happens here at Fossil Creek. So coming into this nursery or a nursery near you would be a well-advised thing, and talk about different kinds of plants. Look at them. Do a little research. In this day and age, the internet is full of research opportunities and information. The one thing I would caution you about, especially if you are doing a landscape here in the Front Range of Colorado, is to not look at a national YouTube or information source that talks about the generalities or how it grows here in Michigan or how it grows here in Texas or here in Georgia. The Front Range at our altitude, with our incredibly dry climate, our relatively clear days as a general rule, and potential windy conditions that dry the landscape out, you want to be informed about the proper plants to use. So you think and you plan, and then you've got to take other steps. Once you've done that, the soil improvement is a critical factor here in the Front Range. Throughout the plains, the high plains, we often have heavy clay soils. These soils are of a montmorillonite, bentonite origin. They repel water all the time until they can't repel it any longer, and they have to accept it in their very fine particles, and then they don't want to release it. They hold on to it. So it's a challenge here unless you amend the soils. How do we amend them? We do it with a quality organic matter that is not highly refined humus compost. That's not sand. That's not anything that won't break up the heavy clays. And even if you are on the plains in a lower drainage area, a river basin kind of thing where it could be sandy soils, you got to do the same thing. So we here sell both a bark chip formula called Soil Pep that has broken down organic matter in it. It's pretty good stuff. We also have soil amendment called cotton burr compost. And that, in my opinion, is the best thing to be able to use. It's got good organic matter, but it's got the kind of fiber and the ability to break up the clays. Now, one of the critical factors in soil amendment is to not just dig a hole and throw some organic matter back in, but to take that soil out of the hole, put it in a wheelbarrow, maybe on a tarp, and start to break up the clays. And you do that manually, either with a trowel or your hands, to crush the clods and get them as small as possible, or the particles of the clay soil as small as possible. And then blend in the right amount of organic matter. We used to say maybe 40 or 50%, but we've learned over the years that really less is more. And we're talking about maybe 20%, maybe as much as 25%. But the key is to blend it evenly as possible in the existing clay soils. If you can do that, you're well ahead of the game. We always want to make the hole wider, not deeper, never deeper. Those new roots are going to grow laterally, number one. And with the soils that we've got, if you put heavy amendment underneath, expecting that that's going to help the root structure, what that does is allow the plant to settle too deeply. And the last thing we want is to have the plant deeper than the edge of the hole, the normal grade. In reality, even or more ideally, higher than the grade by a little bit, and have it slope down to the edge of the hole, hopefully wider than narrower. We're in good shape, and you have helped the plant not only to establish quicker, but to flourish. So soil improvement is important, but it's also important if you have the opportunity, especially on a new house, to enhance the soil ahead of time in a planting bed by maybe adding some good organic matter to the top and rototilling it in and blending it in, raking it in. Even the top 6 or 8 inches would help dramatically. So then it comes to the part of the planting that involves proper plant matching, let's say. Plant zones where you plant like water need plants together in the same location, so you're not overwatering petunias, or rather underwatering petunias to save the sedum ground cover, which doesn't need a lot of water, or you overwater the sedum ground cover to save the petunias. That makes no sense. So those plants that need more water on a regular and consistent basis should be planted with other plants that have that need. And you should try to select not many that have a high water need. And there are a lot of plants to choose from. They don't have to be native plants like yucca. They can be a wide assortment of natives and imported plants that don't grow here naturally, that grow well here under cultivation. So again, a good nursery with good advice. Take the time to come in and walk through a nursery, see the plants, read the tag. But I warn you, don't read and believe religiously about what's written on the tag from the grower. All nurseries in this part of the country import most of their landscape plants. Some come from Southern California, from Hines or Monrovia or Bailey. They come from Oregon. They come from Illinois. They come even from Tennessee. And you want to be able to understand the water needs of those plants as we combine them in the garden. Once you've done that, now you need to design an efficient irrigation system. Very important. And that irrigation system is generally well served by a drip system or a direct spray within the garden designed to get to all of the plants, not just to be a spray that's interrupted by the tallness of one plant and not allowing the irrigation to get to another. So your interaction with a qualified irrigation contractor at this point wouldn't be a bad idea. There are a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there, and doing a drip irrigation system in reality is not that difficult, but you need expertise and knowledge to do the main part of it. People make the mistake, whether it's in xeriscape gardening or in some other general form of landscape irrigation, to put the emitter, which is the end of the little tube that comes out to every plant, right on the crown of the plant, right on the root flare, on the trunk of the shrub or the tree. Well, this is all well and good when you're dealing with a root zone that has been in a pot that first year, and that's where most of the fine feeder roots are. But in reality, the last thing you want to do is leave it there. Now we have a real problem. If you leave it there, there are no feeder roots there. And it's very important to understand that those feeder roots are the only roots, the little hair roots, and it's only the ends of the tips of the hair that can take up moisture and nutrients for the plant. The bigger roots, whatever they may be, pinky size, thumb size, or much smaller or much bigger, have no ability to take up water. They're structural, and they are storage bank accounts for the sugars the plant makes so it can subsist through the winter or difficult times. So you want to develop hair roots, and you want to move that emitter away from the center of the plant and the root zone and periodically get it deeper. Sometimes when that root zone gets real big, a second emitter around the other side might be warranted. However, when plants are first planted, they need more care. I liken it to a newborn. Can't do a darn thing for himself but go to the bathroom and eat. And it can only do that with help. As it gets older, it's fully capable of doing some things on its own, even as a toddler. And then again, as a young infant, and on and on. Plants are not unlike that. When they start to get established, the key in watering is infrequent, deep root watering and not frequent tickling at the surface. And if you do that, you put the water in a shallow zone, dries out, gets wet, dries out, gets wet, dries out. Where are the roots going to grow? They're not going to grow below that. There's no water. They're only going to stay in that growing zone. So as a result, you got to get smart and water heavily without overwatering. And if you've enhanced the soil properly, you encourage deep rooting with the plants. That's part of understanding keeping water needs down and being a good xeriscape principled gardener. So next we get on to mulches. Mulches are critical. In the beginning, way back when, 40, 50 years ago, the only thing we understood was put plastic down, black plastic, and cut a hole for the plant, and it keeps weeds out as a weed barrier. And we put gravel or we put organic mulch, bark chips back in the day. Well, we quickly learned and understood that black plastic kept water from getting down to the root zone in the entire garden, but it also prevented some evap, which might be necessary with too much water in the root zone. Because when you overwater, the plant roots tend to rot, and the plant starts to fade and eventually will die. so that infrequent but deep root watering is the key to properly irrigating xeriscape principles. Mulching helps to insulate the soil, to moderate the changes in temperature rather than have highs and lows, and the roots and the plant therefore is under great stress. So Xeriscape isn't just about organic mulch. You can use gravel, but you got to know where to use it and how to use it. If you are going to plant plants in a big gravel bed, you really need to insulate around the root zone by eliminating the gravel and mulching heavily within that. At least 4 inches. We prefer 5 or 6 inches. This helps the root zone to not freeze early. The wood absorbs some moisture, but it doesn't absorb a bit of heat, so it doesn't overheat the root zone during the hottest times of the season. And you benefit from being able to allow moisture to go in both directions. Now, as far as landscape fabric goes, under any kind of gravel, it's pretty essential. And there are 2 forms that are available. One is spun bound, and there is a machine with little emitters out of little tubes all over this spinning head that spits out thin web-like, spider web-like fiber. And it's spun bound, and it goes down a belt, and all of that fiber goes on top of each other. It's permeable, and it works. The other kind is woven, very much like a checkerboard, but with something that is a fabric made for clothing. Either one can work. You want one of quality and reasonable thickness, and you want to apply it such that if you open the plant hole, you don't cut a big, gigantic hole. You can cut an X through the fabric, open it up, and fold that fabric back in and help with a little bit of weed control. The mulches are the best thing for plants to grow in. And the best kind of mulch we find today is something called gorilla hair mulch. It is a product of lumber mills that have a curved unit that scrapes the bark and the under layers of the bark and the vascular tissue dried up on a log. And it's very fibrous. And once it's processed, it doesn't come apart easily. So you buy a cheap bag of mulch from a box store and you get what you pay for. It tends to blow in the wind. It's easily kicked. It makes a mess. It's annoying. And it really doesn't do the kind of job you want. So a gorilla hair mulch or something similar, although a little bit more expensive, is far more beneficial. So now let's talk briefly about turf and turf alternatives. Most people back in the day, had a bluegrass lawn all over the country, other than in the deeper south, where things like zoysia grass and other Bermudas that could withstand the heat and the long season that wasn't as temperate as the middle of America or northern United States. But in this day and age, there are developed blends of turfgrass seed and turfgrass sod that can be beneficial because bluegrass is the one that takes up the most moisture. It needs to be wetter. So on golf courses and ball fields, all over America, there is a blend, and it's beautiful. It's easy to maintain. It doesn't use as much moisture. So using buffalo grass or blue grama or a more refined blend of fescues and rye that are mixed with a little bit of bluegrass or eliminate the bluegrass can be quite beneficial. Here at Fossil Creek, we sell a number of different mixes of grass seed, most of which are drought tolerant and a lot better than straight bluegrass. The next is to eliminate some of the areas of lawn. Back in the day, water wasn't an issue, populations were lower, and people ended up having vast yards of grass. I remember as a kid, grew up on the East Coast, I had to have a riding mower, otherwise they'd be mowing all night long. So when you have that much lawn in an area especially that is arid and at altitude like ours is, it's important to reduce that amount of lawn that you plant and maintain. Makes it a whole lot easier, a whole lot cheaper, and saves a great deal of water. Now, having said that, I don't mean that you eliminate all grasses everywhere. That's foolish. And if you have young children, there has to be an area, if you don't live really close to a park, where the kids can go out and run around and play and throw a ball around or whatever. Minimize it and plan and think it through. And the last piece to Xeriscape and the 7 principles is proper maintenance. And that maintenance includes weeding, proper pruning of plants to maintain their form and not get the garden overgrown, to adjust those emitters and your irrigation to the maturing landscape as it grows and evolves, upgrading the mulch periodically, and with any mulch, it's going to need a redo at some point. Gorilla hair mulch tends to not only last longer, but is not wasted by being kicked and blown around. And in maintenance, proper maintenance of a lawn, a healthy lawn, prevents weed growth. The best tool to prevent weeds infesting a lawn is having a healthy lawn. So proper fertilization, and let's go over the other principles to put them all together. Think and plan ahead. Spend more time planning than planting. And if you do that, you won't have mistakes to correct on a regular basis. Nothing more frustrating than saying, oh darn, I wish we didn't do that. That might be impossible to change or expensive. Soil improvement. Enhance the soil with the proper organic matter and blend, and be judicious about that, and your plants will grow quicker, stronger, and healthier. Plan the zones, like water need plants together, and have efficient irrigation. If you do it by hand, that's fine. But with proper landscape design, you're ahead of the game. Good mulches. You can use gravel, but be wise in how you do it. Gravel on the south side of a house next to a big concrete driveway, and on the other side a stucco front to the house, is a recipe for creating an oven. So you got to put the right plants in that and be wise as to whether you really want the gravel or not. Reduce the turf and manage it well, and then maintain the garden in the best way possible. I'm glad you were with us today. It's my pleasure to share the knowledge I've gained over all these decades, and I look forward to the next time you're here with us. Take care and happy gardening.